Everyone.
Good morning again.
We continue in our series on the glory of the cross by Tim Chester. Jen's going to read to us from John 6, just one verse. Get off lightly today. Thanks, Jen.
Okay. I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever. This bread is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world.
Thanks, Jen. We sometimes say things like, I'm in a dead-end job. It's squeezing the life out of me. He'll be the death of me. These are all signs that life is not what it's meant to be. Life is touched by death. We're all dying physically. I hope that as you read this, you're in the best of health, but death comes to us all. And aches and pains, the grey hairs and failing energy are reminders that it's on its way. And we're all spiritually dead. Without Christ, we're cut off from the one who gives life. We're dead to God. We can't hear his voice or know his presence. Sin has the better of us and we're powerless to do anything about it. But just as bread gives life, so Jesus gives life. Just as we need to eat in order to live, so by eating, inverted commas, Jesus, the spiritual bread of life, we live. But there's also a big difference. We eat bread, but tomorrow we're hungry again. I had toast for breakfast this morning, and the chances are I'll have it again tomorrow. I can't say, I don't need to eat, I did that yesterday. But the bread which Jesus gives satisfies not just for a day, but forever. This spiritual food brings life, life eternal. This is the big difference between manna and Jesus. Your ancestors ate manna and died, says Jesus, but whoever feeds on this bread will live forever, verse 58. This bread, said Ignatius of Antioch, in the first century, is the medicine of immortality and the antidote against death. One day everyone's physical bodies will die. That's the one great escapable fact of life, or that and taxes. But Jesus promises to give eternal life. How can that be true when Christians end up dead like everyone else? The answer is that Jesus promises that on the last day he will raise his people from the dead to eternal life. Verse 39, he says, I shall lose none of those he has given me, but raise them up on the last day. Verse 44, he says, I will raise them up at the last day. And verse 54, he says, whoever eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life, and I will raise them up at the last day. When a Christian dies, their soul, their essential personality, goes to be with God, but their body is buried or cremated. It wastes away. But Jesus promises that on the last day, he will raise it up again. You'll have a new body, just like Jesus himself when he was raised from the dead on that first Easter day. Jesus describes himself as living bread, verse 51. That's because he himself is the bread. That's because the life of the living Father is in Jesus, verse 57. That's because Jesus will live again after death. And that's because through his resurrection, he will become life-giving bread. But notice too that Jesus gives life by giving his own life. This bread is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world, verse 51. The more this conversation progresses, the closer it gets to Easter. We are dying and he is the living one, but Jesus died so that we might live. Does it feel as if your Christian life lacks life? Has your fizz gone flat? The Spanish monk John of the Cross wrote, my spirit is dry within me because it forgets to feed on thee. Feed on Christ and feel full today, tomorrow, and for eternity. And then there's a prayer. Guide me, O thou great Jehovah, pilgrim through this barren land. I am weak, but thou art mighty. Hold me with thy powerful hand. Bread of heaven, feed me till I want no more. That's William Williams, Pantycelyn, 1717 to 1791. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you on Monday. Thank you.
See you then.